Greetings. Do you know where you are?
No.
You have just entered, not you.
Oh.
You have just entered the Castle of Spirits.
Yes.
This is the place where we tell real, true life ghost stories submitted by readers of the website castleofspirits.com and listeners of this podcast. What do you know about that?
Not a whole lot, apparently.
Well, we're always learning. We're learning on the job. That's what life's all about.
I mean, we've been doing this for almost exactly 2 years by now. You'd think that we'd kind of have our shtick together, but I think...
Oh, she said shtick. It's a clean show. I won't say
I don't.
Darn bad word.
Oh, wow. So this is going to be a special episode, the one in which Vince doesn't swear.
Well, because I am classy.
Oh, are you? Or are you gassy?
Oh, sorry, I got confused.
They're a little different. I know the C and the G kind of sound similar sometimes.
Oh, say, Jane.
Oh, boy.
Can you tell us if you're going to read us any good ghost stories today or what?
I had planned on reading 2 good ones, but if you like, I can read a good one and a bad one.
No, just good
Just
true
good
ghost
ones?
stories today,
Okay.
please.
So I have 2 ghost stories picked out. Well, I have 2 stories picked
No
out.
way.
Would you prefer the long one or the short one first?
The good one first.
They're both good.
Lead with your best foot forward. I think that's a saying.
Do you want the long one or the short one?
Don't ask me to decide. All right. Everybody settle down for a nice quick short story.
Okay. This story is called The Child at the Top of the Stairs, and it was submitted by Anonymous in USA 20 years ago this month in August of 2004. My husband's parents own a beautiful vacation home on the coast of the Bay of Fundy in New Brunswick, Canada. They have owned it for almost 25 years, but the home is over 100 years old. The original wing of the house was built around 1895, and 2 more wings were added, one right before the First World War, and the final wing with the kitchen and the furnace in the late 40s. The original owner of the home was a minister from Wisconsin, Frederick Edwards. He had one son, Trevenin, who joined the U.S. Army and went away to the war. He was tragically killed in France at Mount Falcon. After his son's death, Edwards had his letters to home published into a book in the 20s, and our family has a copy of this book. I've read it and can attest to the fact that Trevenin loved the home on the coast of New Brunswick. Many of his letters state his desire to return there after the war and live a simple life, but unfortunately that was not to be. Edwards, shaken by the loss of his son, eventually began to research the paranormal and even became president of the American Paranormal Society. According to a newspaper article we have on him from the 30s, through his research, he became convinced of life after death. But on to my experience in the house. Early in July of 1993, my husband, daughter, and I drove up from Massachusetts to the home. It's an 8-hour drive, and Kat, who was 2 at the time, hadn't traveled well. Upon arriving at the house, she was cranky and tired, so we put her in a double bed upstairs in the original wing of the house. Then we went down to the kitchen and poured ourselves a cup of tea. We 3 were the only ones in the house. We were talking quietly for a few minutes when we heard a child's footsteps upstairs, running from the bedroom in the old wing, through the hall of the second wing, then to the top of the stairs above the kitchen, where we were sitting. My husband said, "Kat's awake." We waited a minute to see if she would come downstairs. We heard nothing more. No sound came from the top of the stairs. My husband then got up and went to get her. She was not at the top of the stairs. He then went through the upstairs of the house to the bedroom where Kat was fast asleep under the covers. He came back downstairs with a strange look on his face, saying, "She's still asleep." I said, "But we heard the footsteps. It wasn't her?" She is absolutely asleep, and I heard them too, he said. We looked at each other and realized that maybe perhaps we weren't alone in the house. My husband and I did not believe in ghosts, but now I am not so sure. Many people have heard this story, many who have vacationed at the house. Some believe us, some do not, but we both know what we heard that afternoon. It was the sound of a child running happily through the house. I like to think it was Trevenan finally home. Thank you again to Anonymous in USA for submitting The Child at the Top of the Stairs in August of 2004.
Why is it that true ghost stories about ghost children hit so much more chilling than stories about adult ghosts or old people ghosts or even demons? I mean, the stories about ghost children really freak me out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I guess, there's always the emotion behind it saying, a child shouldn't have died.
Right. Yeah, well, it's that dichotomy we've kind of talked about before between, sweetness and innocence, and from this story sounding like there's joy in something that is sad and terrifying. And it's just like we've talked about with comedy horror movies before, that sometimes the comedy is what makes the scary bits scarier because it allows you a little bit of emotional off-gassing, lets your guard down a bit. And I feel like it's a similar thing. You shouldn't be afraid of a child happily playing, but the fact that that child isn't there is just made scarier, I think, by the happiness of the child. I don't know how to explain it, but
it's like a terrible, terrifying joy.
Yeah.
Soup.
Terrifying joy soup.
Paranormal soup. No,
is that
supernatural soup? There you go.
Is that going to be the name of the episode?
Probably not.
Okay.
But it sounds like something that somebody should serve. If you wanted to open up a soup and sandwich place in New Orleans, supernatural soup is a good idea.
Why New Orleans?
Because New Orleans is a famously haunted city.
It could work in more places than that.
Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah, could work there too. Yeah, I would pretty much frequent a restaurant called Paranormal Soup.
Supernatural soup.
Supernatural soup.
Paranormal is
in
safe
any
for
city.
paranormal pizza.
That's true. I would also frequent that place.
And on the walls, they have chilling artwork, depictions of ghosts, photographs, the famous Amityville ghost child photograph, which we debunked some episodes back.
So it would appear that Vince and I are in the market for a super haunted commercial space where we're going to open a paranormal restaurant. So, send us your leads.
Yeah, please do, because, this castle is movable.
It really is.
It has wheels. Mm-hmm. It can rock up and down the highway, the haunted highway, all night long.
Wow, this is just getting weirder.
And we got plenty of coffee.
Hey, Vince.
Yes, Jane.
Why don't you bring it back to planet Earth and maybe read us a story?
Do I really have to go back there?
Yes.
All right. Hey, I do actually have a really cool story for you.
I hope so.
It's a short and sweet, but it's a nice, cool treat. This story was written by Sarah in Washington State, USA. And it was submitted in October of 2004, almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little 20-year theme going on here so far today.
Mm-hmm.
This is called The Call That Never Was. For a Halloween treat, I asked my ESL students to tell a story. One student from Korea, named Sue, had one that sent shivers down my spine. Nearly 4 years ago, when Sue was pregnant with her first child, she would call her best friend, Gina, on a regular basis, since Gina had experience being pregnant. One evening, just like any other, Sue called Gina on the phone. As usual, they engaged in conversation about babies, gossip, and the like. However, one thing Gina noticed was that Sue's voice seemed lower than usual, even depressed. But she figured it was pre-labor jitters, so she let it be. About a week later, Sue called Gina again. Sue said she'd just gotten back home from skiing with her boyfriend. Gina was very disturbed by this because, 1, Sue is married, and 2, Sue was 8.5 months pregnant at the time. Alarmed by this, Gina asked Sue when she started dating this guy and if her husband knew about it. At that point, Sue started acting distant and cold. Abruptly, she said she had to go and hung up. It wasn't until 4 months ago that finally Gina decided to ask her about those 2 particular phone calls. The thing is, Sue said she never had those conversations with Gina. Now you have to know Sue, because if you did, you'd realize that she's very level-headed and wouldn't subject her friends to prank calls at night. To Gina's surprise and confusion, she swears it was Sue's voice, and she even called her by her name. Nevertheless, Sue knows she didn't make those calls. The creepiest part, Gina's caller ID indicated the calls were coming from Sue's house. And that was The Call That Never Was, submitted by Sarah in Washington in October of 2004. Now you might ask me why I chose that story.
Hey, Vince, why did you choose that story?
Whoa, I'm psychic. But in fact, I will tell you why, actually.
I mean, I hope so. I did ask.
And I'm glad you did. You know, something like that happened to me.
Oh?
This was, you don't know about this? You may know about you may know about this because we've known each other for a long time. Back in the late 90s, I was living in a house
do know this story, yeah.
with my best friend Glenn in San Jose. We each had our own phone lines. I needed my own separate phone line because I was on AOL all the time, right?
Those were the days of dial-up.
The dial-up days, when getting on the internet used to cost an arm and a leg.
And make really bad noises.
Oh, I miss the dial-up modem sounds.
I will never miss that.
Oh, it's so retro. I love it. Anyway, one day, my sister called me and she asked me, "Did you call here last night?" I said, "No. Why?" And she said, "I got this really weird phone call at like 11:30 at night, and I could have sworn it was you." Now, the caller didn't say, "This is Vince calling," or Vinny. That's what my family calls me. But the caller called her by her first name, Maria. They said, "Maria?" And she said, "Yeah, is this Vinny?" And the caller said, "Yes." And Maria asked, What's up? What's wrong? Why are you calling so late?" And that the caller, who claimed to be me, who sounded like me, said, "I feel like I'm losing my mind." I think that she disconnected the phone call immediately after that, or maybe the call was ended. This was a long time ago, but that really freaked me out when she told me that. Because I think that a shared fear among most normal people is the fear of losing your mind.
Yeah.
And I was certainly at an age, I was, afraid of a lot of things. And that was one of the things that I did not know I was afraid of until that very moment, because I started to question whether or not that was really me. I said, and I think I asked her, I said, "Are you sure that it wasn't me, right?" And I think she was like, well, if you said it wasn't you, right? That really freaked me out, because just prior to that, I had been on AOL a lot. And, I talked to a lot of girls. You would chat online, then you would say, "Let's, switch off. Here's my phone number and we'll talk." Right.
Yeah.
So I started, hanging out with this girl in the area. And one night she called me and she said, "That was really strange. That call last night when you called me." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You called me last night." And she basically said that I said a lot of inappropriate things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we'll just leave it right there.
That's not something I would ever want to do or enjoy doing. And I got really angry with her because I said, what is this? What are you trying to, not, that wasn't me. I didn't call you.
Yeah.
And then she like went on with it. She's like, I'm really sorry if that's the case, but it was you. We spoke for about an hour.
Wow.
And in a situation like that, I didn't really know this person all that well. So I thought maybe she was messing around with me, trying to figure out if I liked her in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like the game. So I disconnected the call, preceded by the words, "Don't ever call me again."
As you do.
So that had already happened a few months earlier. And then when my sister...
that happened first.
That happened first. And then when my sister called me and told me that she thought that she received a weird phone call from me talking about, I think I'm losing my mind. I was freaked out for like 3 months afterwards. And I talked to a couple of other friends of mine that I had phone calls, and, you know, we talked on the phone and stuff like that. I had a lot of friends, like a lot of internet friends at the time that I would call on the phone and talk. And I said, have I ever done anything like that to you or called you up or anything? And she said, no. She said, you're not the kind of person to do that. Have you had blackouts? You know, asking me all kinds of questions. And I said, no, never. And she really helped me out, helped me through that moment of doubt, because I really thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And the story that I read today, The Call That Never Was, it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are echoes of, wrapped into the story of mimic demons and doppelgangers and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went.
However, it could also be somebody with having a mental health crisis.
Yeah, fugue state stuff.
Which is also terrifying because, like I said, that touches a nerve that really freaks everybody out. I prefer to think that it was a mimic demon. Hey, maybe there was a mimic demon that was calling people that I knew. Which is terrifying. Not
to diminish your story, but I think I know what happened.
What?
It was your pal Glenn. Because the whole, I think I'm losing my mind.
Sounds like something Glenn would say.
That sounds exactly like something Glenn would say. You know, I'm calling him out right now. Glenn did it.
You know, okay,
and you lived with him at the time.
This was around 1998. So I have a kind of a fuzzy memory of it all, but I'm pretty sure I asked him, dude, were you in my room? Did you make a phone call, and freak my sister out? He said, first of all, I don't have her number. It was back in the day when I didn't have numbers programmed into my landline phone at home, but I did ask him. And then I think he said something like, when would I have come into your room while you were sleeping? And anyway. So Glenn, if you're listening, and if that was you better fess up.
That's right.
There's a statute of limitations that I guess has run out. It lasted 25 years. That is now elapsed. So you can now admit to your nasty doings.
And your friendship won't be ruined. Is that what you're saying?
No, because he can cite all the other things that he said or did for me in the succeeding 25, 26 years.
It's very nice of you to forgive him like that.
Well, when you got a few friends, you got to be very forgiving.
You got to hold on to the ones you have.
And speaking of holding on to the ones we have, Jane.
Yeah.
My sweet.
Ew.
A guy tries to be sexy and, well, that happens. Do you have a creepy ass story? Oh, I said the bad word.
Yep.
Do you have a creepy bleep story for us?
I do.
Sort of cleanse our palate of the whole weirdness that I just shared?
I do. It's a long one. It's not quite as long as my story last week, but I think it's a good one.
All right. Well, we're all ears.
This story is called Twilight Zone in West Virginia, and it was submitted by Laken Eubank Jr. in West Virginia, USA, August of 2004. I was hauling a load of lumber through eastern West Virginia, out of Virginia, when I experienced something that I can only describe as a Twilight Zone event. There are no ghosts in this story, but that only adds to the eeriness of it. I've been a trucker for many years and have put many miles behind me over the years. I picked up a load of lumber in Northern Virginia, and I was traveling Route 55, a 2-lane road through West Virginia, on my way home for the weekend. 55 goes through Petersburg, Moorfield, and Seneca Rocks, West Virginia. I remember crossing a covered steel bridge over the Lost River. I knew that I would be in Baker in just a short time. I had planned on stopping in Baker for a soft drink and a short break. I was pretty tired, and that is probably why I was sidetracked. I don't remember making any turnoffs or exits from Route 55. Once I reached Seneca Rocks, I was going to head west on 33 toward Elkins, and then they're 1.5 hours to home. After I crossed the bridge, I noticed that I had been driving for an awful long time. The trip from Baker to Moorfield is only about 30 minutes. When I looked at my watch, I had been driving about 3 hours longer than it should have taken me. As I was driving along, I noticed that I was on a strange road, not Route 55 that I had driven time and time again. I was having to pull hills that weren't there before. I was having to use the low side of the transmission, and it was taking me an excessive amount of time to drive this strange road. Up one side and down the other, out of one curve, only to go into another. I got so mad I started beating myself up. I couldn't believe that I allowed myself to get so tired driving that I would take a wrong turn and end up lost on a wrong road. I quickly grabbed my road map, and in only a few minutes found that I must have been heading back to Virginia via a different route, 258, I think. This was really going to put me behind schedule, and I was furious with myself. How stupid I was. I looked at the map and tried to find an alternate route back to Moorfield. The only roads on the map were dirt roads through the hills. There was no way I was going to try to drive a 60-foot tractor trailer through the woods. The only way to get back on track was to go on to Virginia and pick up Route 28 back to Seneca Rocks, or find a place to turn around and backtrack to where I made the wrong turn. This is where I realized that something was wrong. As I drove along, I noticed that the road was unusually smooth. No potholes, no rough places at all. I looked for a wide place or a driveway or some place big enough to turn around. There wasn't a wide place or driveway anywhere. There were no guardrails, though this road was hilly and curvy. It was so curvy that my trailer was crossing way over the center of the road in every curve, and I was having to drive across the center of the road so my trailer didn't go off the road on the other side. This is when I noticed that there were no yellow painted center lines or white painted edge lines. Where in the world was I? The longer I drove, the weirder it got. There were no road signs, no mailboxes, no utility poles, no wildlife, and worst of all, for 3 hours of driving, I never met or saw one single other vehicle. I grabbed my map again and tried to determine where I was. As I looked at my map, I noticed that I would be coming to a small town called Matthias, and then, just a few short miles more, I would go through another small town called Lost River. I finally saw a sign that read Matthias. I was relieved I was no longer lost, for I was at least on the road to Route 28, even though I would be late. As I entered Matthias, I expected to see houses, cars, and maybe some people, a post office, and a store or two. There was nothing. No driveways, no homes, stores, people, cars, painted lines, road signs, mailboxes, nothing. I thought it was pretty strange, but a lot of places in West Virginia have just a sign designating a town. And a few miles later, there would be all of these things. The next thing I saw was a sign that read Lost River. I pondered for a moment and wondered what happened to Matthias. As I continued to drive along, Lost River didn't have any homes, mailboxes, or anything. Nothing. Just this incredibly smooth paved road with no painted lines or guardrails. I grabbed my map again and was relieved that in about 30 minutes or so, I would finally make it to the intersection of Route 28. I had been driving on this road for at least 3 hours, and I was getting really tired. About the time I expected to reach 28, I looked up ahead, and I finally reached a town with cars, people, homes, utility poles, and yes, even painted lines on the road. To my amazement, I was in Moorfield. I was flabbergasted. Why did it take me over 6 hours to drive a 3-hour trip through this stretch of road? Before anyone thinks I went to sleep and miraculously made this drive half-conscious, when I checked the mileage on the odometer, I had driven 70 miles and 3 hours out of my way. And when I entered Moorfield, I was on Route 55. I had never left Route 55. I never made a wrong turn, but I was definitely on a road in the Twilight Zone, and I shudder to think what might have happened if I had stopped anywhere on this road and got out of the truck. If I had stopped, it would have had to be in the middle of the road, because there wasn't even a wide enough place on this road to pull off. An old trucker friend of mine had a blank look on his face when I told him about this strange drive. He looked like he saw a ghost. He told me that when he was driving truck years ago, he had heard stories that were similar to mine, that happened along this same stretch of road. But he didn't personally know of any other drivers, so he dismissed it as an old trucker story. I told my family that I just had to go back to this place to see where I was, so in July, a couple years later, I took my wife to visit her family in Virginia. On the way back, I told my family I was going to take them through the Twilight Zone. As we went through the steel bridge, I described that this is the last thing I remembered seeing until I reached Moorfield. When we got to Baker, I made a left turn on 258 and told my family that I don't remember making this turn in the truck, but I must have. In about 20 minutes, we got to Matthias, and to my surprise, there were houses everywhere, cars, people, and 258 had painted lines all the way. I want to note that when I was in the truck, the road was smooth, but it was not freshly paved. About 9 miles more, we made it to Lost River, and there were stores, a post office, homes, people, cars. I couldn't believe it. I said, I swear these things weren't here before. I don't remember the name of the state park on down the road from Lost River, but I told my family that we would drive that road to Moorfield. It goes through the woods, and it must have been the road I was on. When we got to the park, there's a gigantic sign that reads, "No trucks." I knew that if I had seen that sign, I would not have continued on in a truck. We drove several miles on this road, and it seemed eerily familiar, but there was wide places, mailboxes, and scattered homes. I told my family that I had to have been on this road in the truck, but I didn't know how. After we crested the hill, I realized that there is no way I could have driven my truck on this road. About halfway down this hill, there's a switchback, and there's no way I could have pulled my trailer around it. No way. It would have taken dozers and wreckers to slide the trailer around this curve, and it probably would have done extreme damage to the truck and trailer. So I determined that this is not the road I drove. To this day, I do not know where I was. When we reached the end of the road, it intersected with another road that leads into Moorfield from a different direction. Then I knew that I did not drive my truck on that road through the woods. My old trucker friend told me that there is something weird about that area of West Virginia. He told me about his experience. He was driving his pickup truck on Route 28 towards Seneca Rocks. He knew he would be at Seneca Rocks in about 15 minutes from where he was. He had driven this area time and time again and had spent a large part of his life in Romney, at a school for the deaf, so he was very familiar with the area. He said that in the time that you snap your fingers, he was from where he was to Seneca Rocks. It happened so fast that he slammed on his brakes and slid out of the road and almost crashed. Shaken up, he got out of his pickup and walked over to the little store there to calm down and get a soft drink. This is when he looked at the clock on the wall and looked at his watch, and he had gotten to Seneca Rocks 15 minutes early, for his watch was 15 minutes slower than the clock on the wall. Thank you again to Lake and Eubank Jr. in West Virginia, USA, for submitting Twilight Zone in West Virginia in August of 2004. Now, Vince, how do you think that was even possible? I mean, this is the days before Google Maps going all crazy and getting you lost in the middle of the mountains in Colorado. And the guy didn't even have GPS to be able to look and see where he was or any of that.
Or MapQuest directing him to drive off a cliff.
Oh, in 2004, I think there was definitely MapQuest, yeah.
Yeah, that was a great story. I can't believe I've never read that one on the site.
I know. I've seen the title before while scanning through stories, but it does remind me. Our story is a little bit more explainable, but it does remind me of that time that we were driving back from Estes Park, Colorado to home. And this is just a few years ago. And we were using Google Maps, obviously. And we're driving back, and suddenly we're on this dirt road going up through the mountains. And it's a windy, pretty steep dirt road, and it was heavily trafficked. There were cars everywhere kicking up dirt,
trucks. There
were semi trucks, and I was like, what is going on here? And it was just Google Maps going, this will be funny, watch, hey, turn left. You know, I mean, it did eventually spit us back out to where we needed to be, but we could have continued on that road. There was no reason that we couldn't have just stayed on that road, but Google Maps was having some fun with us. But that is not what happened here.
Was it Google Maps? Or did we slip into some sort of alternate universe where that road had not yet been paved? And did all the other cars and vehicles traveling with us experience the same thing? Or was it just us?
Maybe. I do remember we looked back, though, and we were like, why did it put us here, but we could have just stayed there. I don't know.
Don't mess.
I know, I'm messing with the illusion. But if anyone else has ever experienced something similar, or if you know this area, if you have been there and had something strange like that happen, or if you think you know exactly what happened to Lakin and you can explain it, we'd love to hear all of that. Feel free to contact us and tell us.
But I have heard stories like this, and it's really interesting that it always seems to happen to truck drivers.
Yeah, drivers have a lot of
But it makes sense because
stories.
they do a lot of driving.
Yeah.
And, the road is their workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us just get on a road to get from point A to point B and don't actually live on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's appropriate because when you think about it, roads are just these liminal spaces, these transitional places that we drive on to get to where we want to go. We don't want to be on the road.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about like long stretches. And so who's to say that the nature of those places, where everything just sort of flashes past like dust in the wind.
Oh boy.
No, but where everything just flashes by and nothing really stays.
Yeah.
Maybe that does something to the environment.
Maybe
that does something to the fabric of what's holding us all together. We talked about before about the metros. I think you're putting
a little more importance on roads than, wow.
No, roads are important. Roads are important.
They are the fabric that holds us together.
Well, and they could be wearing that area threadbare Just like we talked about the London tubes, the way they go spinning around and around, and they could be causing some sort of weird magnetic thing that causes people to have time slips and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe roads are conduits to another dimension, which is why you hear stories about Resurrection Mary.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
They're like little mini Hadron Colliders.
We don't do enough
creating
driving.
Wormholes here and there.
Well, keep the wormholes out of your brain and make sure that you just keep all four on the road, and always monthly check your air pressure on your tires. Very important. I used to work in a tire shop. I know about these things.
These tire obsessed guys. Hey, Vince.
Hey, Jane.
Speaking of tire obsessed.
Yes.
I was wondering if you had another story to read to us.
I do, but it's not very good. It's not as good as that one.
Okay. Well,
just kidding.
Go ahead and do it.
Also, by the way, I looked on my Google Maps to see if Seneca Rocks, West Virginia was anywhere near Point Pleasant, Mothman. And it's not. It's like 3.5 hours away. So
do better, Seneca Rocks.
Weirdly enough, and I don't know why at all, I'm surprised when weird things happen when we record this show.
Mm-hmm.
This story was written and submitted to the Castle of Spirits website in October of 2004. So we've inadvertently created a theme where all of our stories are within a month or two
20
years old. Classic stories now.
Mm-hmm.
It was written and submitted by Steph in Utah, USA. And the story is simply called Nicholas. This started when my uncle got engaged to his girlfriend, and they went searching for a bigger house to accommodate the two of them, his 3 sons, her son, and my sister, who was staying with him at the time. They found a place that was perfect, nice and big, and in their price range. The one drawback was that the house was old, and the owner said it was haunted by 3 young children. My uncle's fiancée is a psychic medium type and had no problem with it, so they got ready to move in. All throughout the move, there were many occurrences of laughing, giggling, running footsteps from the top floor. The first time my sister took me to the house, I got chills just from looking at it. She pulled around to the back to park, and I looked up and I saw a very old treehouse. The treehouse was up very high, and the wood was decaying. It was kind of like a big open deck, only at the top of a tree. It gave me the creeps real bad. Things continued in that way. Just footsteps from time to time, giggling, children's voices during the night, tapping on the windows outside. My sister has a son that at this time was 3 years old. He started talking to people in his bedroom, and when asked who he was talking to, he said, "My friends." But after a while, he became terrified of his bedroom, and he started sleeping in my sister's bed every night. One day when I was over there babysitting, I sent him to his room to get a book to read. He went in there and just started screaming. When I ran in and got him, he told me that his friend had hurt him. I told my sister that she needed to keep him out of that room, that something was in there that was hurting him, so she did. She brought all his clothes and toys into her bedroom until we could figure out what to do. A week or two later, while the two of them were in the kitchen eating breakfast, her son was staring out the window at the treehouse for a very long time without saying anything. She told him to hurry and eat because they had to get going, so he took a few bites of cereal and said, "Mommy, Nicholas is scared." She looked at him concerned. He didn't know anybody called Nicholas. "Why is he scared?" she asked. He looked back outside at the treehouse and said, "He climbed into the treehouse and then he fell down. Nicholas is bleeding." Then he turned and looked at something next to the back door that my sister couldn't see, and he became terrified. Needless to say, we never made him go into his room again, and my sister moved out of there not too long after that. The room is now inhabited by my cousin's friend who is staying at the house. Yes, my uncle and them still live there to this day. And that one's called Nicholas by Steph in Utah from October of 2004.
I wish I knew where in Utah that was.
No kidding. Steph, if you're out there,
Come on, just tell us. We won't tell anybody.
just our listeners. And we'll descend upon the
No.
house like crazies. No? All right.
No.
But that's a freaky story.
Yeah.
And again, it touches on that whole fear of children
Yeah.
haunting a house. I guess you want to, a lot of people want to believe that you want to, if and when, God forbid, a child dies, that the child is swept to heaven or into the afterlife or whatever a person believes happens, and that they're not stuck between the living and the dead, between the here
And
the thereafter. Lost, like something stuck in a machine.
More
I mean, I think-
liminal space talk.
Yeah.
That space between being alive and...
That's the ultimate liminal space.
It really is.
And the aforementioned Twilight Zone is that space between light and darkness, between sleep and wakefulness.
Between poetry and just weird ramblings.
I thought you were going to say between poetry and motion,
Wow.
but I guess that's not going to happen.
No.
I don't know. That was a creepy story. I
Yeah, I liked
liked
it. I liked it a lot. The simplicity of the kids saying, "My friend hurt me." Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to need some details here. Like,
Did he bite you? Did he just call you a bad name?
Yeah.
That hurts.
Biting ghosts are terrifying. I don't want to experience a biting ghost.
We have an old episode from a year or two ago called "When Ghosts Bite."
Yeah. We do actually have one of the ghosts here in the castle who is a biter. I've not experienced the biting firsthand, but I've seen his chompers in his face, and it's terrifying.
And are you saying that just because the music started and the ghosts are coming?
But there's only one ghost coming right now.
Oh God, that's even creepier.
It is the biter.
A horde of ghosts, a gaggle of ghosts.
That was the last episode.
Oh yes.
This is the lone biter coming down the hall right now. Okay. He's requesting chicken for dinner. Fried chicken? Nope, just a whole a live chicken. He's requesting. So
Thank God he didn't ask for a live cat. We might have given him his wish.
although Mr. Moon has been very quiet today and very respectful, we have not had to stop recording because of his yowling. Not once today.
We have to do that
which
like every
is
single
a record.
time. Every single time we have to do that.
Yes. So, all right, guy, we see you. Your chicken is coming
All right, settle down.
up, I guess.
Settle down. All the other ghosts are coming down the hall now too. That the music means that they're hungry and they must be fed.
We're going to have to get at least 3 chickens.
Settle down. I'll feed you, my darlings.
Oh,
And now he's coming a little close. Does this guy have a name?
no.
Fido. Look, Fido.
Fido.
Get back. Hey. Sit. Oh, he don't got legs. He can't sit. He's floating. Float still.
Okay,
Float.
you're being very ghost ableist right now.
This guy's getting close to me. I don't like this.
All right, well,
Get
we
him
better
off of me.
we better wrap it up. Remember that if you like this show, tell a friend.
And if you hate it, tell your enemies.
All of them.
All of them. Oh, this ghost is one of my enemies, I think, right now. Get back. Get back. No, gay.